investors certainly loving the update on the business. How is business? How is it kicking off in this final quarter?
Yeah, thank you for having me back. Happy to be here. We're obviously quite pleased with the third quarter results and the subsequent reaction to them. And I do think it shows, all the work that we've been building to over the last few years and the enduring strength in the model. And so you saw that top line come in pretty nicely at 8%, net 9% adjusted for the German business. And that really is compounding share gains there in the top line. And that, of course, flowed through quite nicely to adjusted EBITDA gains.
How would you describe the consumer?
Yeah, it still remains for us that the consumer is quite focused on promotional events. And so our consumer is typically a woman, mass market, and she needs those promotional events to really come in off the sidelines and get excited to shop. We've talked in the past about, how the promotional events really work as a marketing banner to get someone interested in the category and to then bring them into the site. And that is still the case. Those promotional events are pretty necessary to get the consumer engaged and excited. We do see relatively more strength in that higher end consumer. For us, that's consumers that are transacting on our Paragold site, which is our luxury brand, or specialty retail brands. We've said that those are actually growing at a faster rate than the core Wayfair.com business, and you are seeing more strength in that consumer segment.
Talk about promotions. You mentioned them. You have to get consumers excited. Do you have to get them more excited now than you did in any other part of this year? We're really trying to understand the economic environment out there.
What's interesting is this category in particular has been down for so long. So the category, obviously boomed during COVID and then had a pretty significant pullback 22, 23, 24. So throughout 24 and 25 for this category, promotions have been critical. I would say what we have seen, really throughout 25 is there's also been some mix shift dynamics in addition to sort of higher end consumer and mass market consumer. You do see consumers that are shopping for, things like decorative accents, decor, maybe things with a lower ticket than, buying a new couch or a new chair. And I think that's the idea. Someone wants to refresh and is excited about that, but they want to be mindful of how much they're spending. And so they're looking for the smaller piece as maybe opposed to the big piece.
Well, to that point, Kate, I think about the pandemic, we realized that's the anomaly. I mean, I'm looking at your stock is up 142% this year, which is quite a run, but it's still down about 69% from 2021. We know everyone was at home, spending on their home. That's why people were working at home, spending on their pets. There was a lot of stuff going on. So I am curious about when you look at the third quarter growth, how much came from intrinsic share capture versus category stabilization? Because it does sound like we're seeing a lot of stabilization here.
It's a great question. We think the category itself is roughly flat to slightly down. So I do think the category has stabilized. And we see that. We look at a variety of different data sources and, they're all slightly different, but they coalesce around a flattish category. This is in contrast to last year where the category was down maybe, mid-single digits to high single digits. So that's certainly an improvement, but we don't yet see the category as having returned to growth. So when we look at sort of 8% growth, right, that's definitely us gaining share on a category that is, say, flattish.
When consumers are buying from Wayfair, are they buying to replace stuff, or is this trade up activity? What is the data telling us or telling you?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're certainly starting to hear that a bit from folks. Have we hit replacement cycles? And really, to the conversation we were having around the pandemic, it speaks to so much of the pull forward in demand that happened during that pandemic period. I think we see a few things that drive purchase events. One is moving, and obviously that part of the category has still been, quite suppressed. One would be life cycle changes. So, your kid, you had a baby and now they're moving into a toddler bed, or the kid's leaving the home and you're turning their bedroom into an office. So sort of as your life cycle evolves, regardless of if you're moving. And then a third would be, replacement categories or sort of, zhuzhing up your room. In replacement cycles, I think a lot of folks are eager to see if, what was bought in 2020 and 2021 needs to be replaced at this time. And I think what's helpful to understand there is it's just very category by category specific. So if you bought, opening price point outdoor furniture, and you live in the Northeast, maybe 5 years is, an appropriate time frame. But if you bought a, nice couch, you're certainly not hitting the replacement cycle on that yet.
I got to say, I love zhuzhing. I love buying pillows, but I'm afraid if I bring any more pillows home, my husband's going to divorce me because he's like, I can't even find I can't find the bed anymore. Hey, listen, you talk, Kate, about the higher end brands like Paragold. You're seeing some strength certainly in that area. I am curious too about your retail expansion, the physical store retail expansion, or your loyalty program. If that's adding incremental customers versus shifting existing digital ones. What are you seeing on that front?
Yeah, great question. So on the physical retail side, we are adding incremental customers. We're actually seeing in our first large format Wayfair store that's been open for a little over a year now, more than 50% of the folks who are transacting in that store are actually new to the customer file. We have a 100 million customer file, right? So to be getting new customers at this stage is pretty exciting. So it's definitely acting as a way into the brand. Paragold, we actually just opened 2 stores for Paragold. So we opened one in Houston in the spring, or sort of early summer, and then we just opened in West Palm Beach in Florida a week ago. So it's very early days on those stores, but we do think that they should work as a nice customer acquisition channel. The loyalty program, which is about a year old, I would say that's acting more for existing customers to get them to be increasingly sticky with us. So what we're seeing from loyalty customers is nice incrementality, meaning, if they were going to purchase, 6 or 8 times a year, and maybe they were buying 1 to 2 from us, hopefully we're getting that next purchase, that second or third purchase as well now.